So is this meeting also being recorded? In that sense, it will be available on YouTube?
Yeah, it will be available in YouTube also. It will be recorded in my YouTube channel. So I will share it to you also. Okay.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I think YouTube is. So it's now shared in YouTube. So going to be 7:50 now, no? So YouTube, is it disturbing the channel? So anyway, okay, let me do it. Okay. Okay. So can you listen me? Okay.
Yes, I can. It's a bit confusing.
Okay,
I can see two accounts.
Okay. Yeah. So I stopped one, and then it is already
Okay.
okay now. Now it will be okay, I think.
Okay, sure.
So I did it in two accounts. No, so it's disturbing. So
Students are able to listen to this lecture through the YouTube streaming.
yeah, it will be live in the YouTube also.
Okay.
So I think we can start it now.
Sure.
Actually, yesterday was the World Environment Day. No? So being Sunday, we could not organize it. So we choose today instead of yesterday being Sunday. Actually, I think it is not Sunday or Monday. It's every day should be Environment Day, no? So today we are having Dr. Himangana Gupta. I think I'll request you kindly to give a brief introduction by yourself because you have a long experience of working on this biodiversity, especially on environment. So straight, I request our resource person today to have a brief introduction and then around half an hour of your lecture on biodiversity, and then around 5-10 minutes we'll open for questions.
Sure.
So over to you, Dr. Himangana. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So actually, to cut the long story short, there are a lot of things that I could actually start with, but I did my PhD in climate and biodiversity linkages. And then I was working with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in the greenhouse gas inventory cell. And so basically working on climate change mitigation actions and greenhouse gas inventory, national inventory. And then I went to Japan to do my postdoctoral studies on climate biodiversity and community linkages. And then currently I'm working as a manager in World Resources Institute. So, and I'm also serving as lead author in the Nexus Assessment Report of Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. So, just cutting it short, but if you want to know more about me, you can feel free to contact me anytime. And Professor Sinha, if it's fine, shall I share my presentation?
Yeah, we can listen. Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
So it says that the host has disabled the screen share. If you could allow me, then I'll be able to share the screen.
So can you share it?
No, it still says that the host has disabled participant screen sharing. So if you enable screen sharing, then I will be able to share. It's not allowing me to share actually.
Okay.
Yes, it says that host has disabled screen sharing.
I think Madam should be made co-host, and only she can share.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I make you the host now. Kindly.
I hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah. It is visible now.
Invite deposit address. I invite you to
Okay, so shall I start? So I'm getting requests for allowing people to admit the room after I am the host. So, okay, I'll do that whenever the request comes to me. So as Professor Sinha said that there is no day to celebrate World Environment Day. Every day is World Environment Day. So I've just written here celebrating World Environment Day today. So basically, I would like to talk about climate change and biodiversity because these two are the most important global issues that people have been talking about on the international stage. And most of the students might have actually heard about climate change and biodiversity a lot. So just to give you a brief overview of what is climate change and what is biodiversity and how it is interconnected to each other, I thought to take up this lecture basically. So starting with what is climate change, I know most people might be knowing what is climate change, but there are sometimes confusions about, there are so many jargons used like greenhouse gases, like sources of greenhouse gases, sinks of greenhouse gases. So I just want to explain a little bit through this infographic that I have prepared So basically, there are three main greenhouse gases: methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon dioxide, which are primarily responsible for climate change. There are other greenhouse gases as well, but you need to know that climate change is not as bad as we think. If there was no climate change at all, then the temperature of the earth would be minus 18 degrees C. It would be difficult for us to survive on this earth if there was no climate change. So we need global warming. We need, the warming of the earth is needed to survive, to have more plants, to have water, to have precipitation. So all this phenomena is very important. But now what is the problem? The problem is that climate change is happening beyond an extent that the warming is happening more than an average temperature that is necessary for us to live on the earth. If it increases more than that, then the survival may become difficult. It will start impacting ecosystems. It will impact our glaciers. It will impact our sea levels. Sea levels will rise. There is a possibility that many of the islands, many of the coastal areas might be inundated underwater. So those kinds of concerns are there. So that is why we need to control climate change. We want to control the rise of temperature that is happening because of the greenhouse gases. So these greenhouse gases, basically how they are trapped in the Earth's atmosphere is, greenhouse gases have a certain kind of a chemical structure that they absorb infrared radiation. Infrared radiation is the hot radiation that comes from the sun towards the Earth, and that is trapped inside the Earth because it basically covers the Earth like a blanket. It doesn't allow the radiation to go up beyond that particular level because its wavelength is so long that it is reflected back towards the Earth. So the heat remains inside the Earth. So these greenhouse gases are just 1% in the atmosphere, but still their impact is very, very high. And what is the source of greenhouse gases? Source of greenhouse gases is our transport sector, our cars, our vehicles, and our electricity sector, because we burn coal for electricity. So when we burn coal, carbon dioxide is produced. Then there is a sink of carbon dioxide. What is a sink? Sink is forest, oceans. Forests absorb carbon dioxide, so forests act as major sinks of carbon dioxide. And the mitigation efforts, we often talk about mitigation of climate change. It means reducing climate change. So the mitigation efforts are to reduce the quantity of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. Then we also hear about adaptation. Adaptation basically means to improve the resilience of ecosystem to climate changes. And then what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is a variety of plant and animal life living on Earth or in different habitats. It can include genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. And where does biodiversity exist the most? It exists more in the forests. It exists in the oceans, especially in coral reef areas. We have coral reefs are known to be very highly biologically diverse areas. And we think that biodiversity does not affect us directly, but it does affect. And you being in the Northeast area, which is very much rich in biodiversity, it's a biodiversity, a part of it is a biodiversity hotspot, and you know what might be the benefits of biodiversity more than me. So it's important for economic benefits, it's important for human health, it provides a lot of ecological benefits, and it also provides a lot of cultural and spiritual benefits. Many people's culture, even in the Northeast, that is directly linked to biodiversity. So now, before I go deeper into how climate change and biodiversity should be integrated, what are the policies, what is being discussed these days about climate and biodiversity, I would like to talk about how environment became important on the global stage. So until 1960, environment was not important. All countries, excluding the developing countries, most of the developed countries like US, UK, Japan, Australia, all these countries were industrializing at a fast pace. So because of that, a lot of pesticides were also being used. So in 1960, it was realized that a pesticide called DDT was being sprayed so much, was being used so much that it was leading to the death of the birds. It was leading to death of the birds because the egg of the bird used to crack because of consumption of DDT by the bird. So that's why there were no new births taking place. So that time, an author named as Richel Carson She wrote a book called The Silent Spring. That book basically covered the issue of birds dying, and there will be a time that we will not have a spring in which we can listen to chirping of the birds. So that book became the reason for environment becoming a global concern. It started from the use of pesticides. It started from pollution. And then in 1972, there was an important conference on human environment known as Stockholm Conference on Human Environment. So this conference laid the seeds for sustainable development that we have to develop, we have to industrialize, but it should be done in a manner so that our future generations don't have to compromise with the kind of ecosystem services that they deserve. They should also get clean environment. They should also get clean water to drink. It's very important. So that's why this conference laid the seeds for sustainable development. But slowly and slowly in 1988, we came to know that climate change was happening. And it was happening because of anthropogenic, means it was happening because of human activities. And that also main reason was industrialization. Because industrialization, you burn fossil fuels like coal, petrol, so natural gas. If you burn fossil fuels, carbon dioxide will be emitted. So all this led to another Earth Summit, very popular Earth Summit known as the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. So this Earth Summit had 5 major outcomes. One was the Agenda 21. Agenda 21 set the base for Sustainable Development Goals, or you can say Millennium Development Goals at that time. I think everybody of you must be knowing about Sustainable Development Goals, but Sustainable Development Goals basically have come after the Millennium Development Goals. So Agenda 21 was even before that. So it basically set the tone for sustainability globally. Then there was an important convention on biological diversity. Convention on biological diversity was to protect biological resources. It focused on sustainable utilization of resources and basically access and benefit sharing of the biological resources. There was another important convention on United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This convention focused on stabilizing the Earth's temperature to a level so that it does not interfere with the global systems, with ecosystems. It does not cause any damage to the survival of the human beings. So that was the, you see it's written, at a level that could prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. So this UNFCCC was established, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this convention basically divided the countries into Annex 1, Annex 2 and non-Annex 1. Annex 1 countries were those countries who were given targets to reduce their carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel burning, from agriculture, through forestry activities and all that. So they had to work towards mitigating climate change. These countries included countries like European countries, US, Australia, Canada, UK, but it did not include India. That is why India falls under non-Annex 1 countries. But the first climate agreement that was signed under UNFCCC was the Kyoto Protocol back in 1997. But no developed country was ready to basically ratify the protocol, or you can say that the Kyoto Protocol was not ratified because some countries, they were not ready to reach an agreement on reducing their emissions unless all developing countries were on board. But finally, Kyoto Protocol was ratified in 2005 and countries started to take some action towards reducing emissions. But many countries could not meet their targets. And it was decided that all countries in the world should take climate commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the Paris Agreement in 2015 happened. Many of you might be knowing about Paris Agreement, many of you might not be knowing. It's a major agreement, major climate change agreement as on date to basically reduce greenhouse gas emissions on the earth and also to adapt to changing climatic conditions. So currently, when we are doing this lecture, negotiations are going on in Bonn on deciding the modalities and procedures and different elements of the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So the countries, the participants from all the countries are present and born at this point of time to decide the future of the earth. And this actually happens twice every year. But still, the post 2020 actions have not been implemented on the ground properly. We are still waiting for the developed countries to start taking mitigation actions. Similarly, for biodiversity, and biodiversity was also recognized as an international issue, as I said already, as a part of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So, the objective of this convention was to conserve biological diversity and sustainable utilization of resources and access and benefit sharing arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. I will not go into the detail of the CBD. If you are interested, then you can ask question and then I can explain what CBD is, what kind of targets are there under CBD, and how India is related to that. I will be happy to discuss that. But I want to explain or focus more on how climate change and biodiversity is interconnected with each other, which is the topic of the research of the topic of the lecture today. So ecosystems and biodiversity basically provide a lot of services to support human well-being. This includes clean water, clean air, carbon absorption, normally known as carbon sequestration. Sequestration means absorbing carbon from the atmosphere. And you know that the forest, the ecosystems, they absorb carbon from the atmosphere to give out oxygen. That is why without ecosystems, without trees, we cannot sustain life. So it's very important for us. But what are we doing in return? We are causing degradation and loss of biodiversity. We are destroying our ecosystems. So that is how this interconnection is there between people and ecosystems and biodiversity. And how climate change is linked to ecosystems. Climate change is impacting the ecosystems very intensely, very badly. But biodiversity and ecosystems are also important to mitigate the effects of climate change because trees absorb carbon dioxide. That is why they have a strong link with climate change. So here I want to show you through this diagram what are the interconnected drivers and impacts. So here you see that land use change. Land use change means there was a forest growing in a particular land. You cut that forest and then you use it for urbanization or for making cities or for doing agriculture. What it leads to ultimately, that is deforestation. And how deforestation leads to loss of biodiversity. Loss of biodiversity also leads to loss of traditional crop varieties. And then ultimately it leads to loss of livelihood. Like that, all these different drivers of environmental change are connected to each other. And then it becomes like a web. Each driver impacting each other, causing more pressure on the ecosystem. And this creates a kind of a very difficult web from which it is very difficult to get out. It's very important to first tackle the cause, tackle the driver to be able to break the cycle of impacts that you are seeing here. Overexploitation, lack of awareness, demographic change, which demographic change can be reduction of population and also increase of population. If there is reduction of population, then it will lead to abandoning of the land. That is also bad. And if there is increase in population, it will lead to overexploitation of the land, which is also bad. So both ways, it's a bad story. And now this I have taken from BBC, but the voice is mine. And I hope you'll be able to listen to the voice as well. If you're not able to listen, please point out.
Deforestation is currently responsible for 10% of the global emissions. This is driven by large-scale land use change for urbanization, agriculture, and monoculture plantations of economic species. In addition to land use change, forests and their associated biodiversity are also being directly and indirectly impacted by changing climatic conditions. Loss of forest cover has also increased the climate adaptation gap.
So I hope through this video you were able to see that all the green spaces, they're continuously being converted into barren lands or continuously being converted to cities or to agricultural lands. So forest loss is occurring very fast globally. Thankfully, in India, we do have forest degradation, but deforestation as such is not reported in any of the government reports. So there is a lot of deforestation happening world over. And a lot of associated biodiversity loss is also happening because of that. So why don't we give importance to biodiversity? Why do we think that only climate change is important? Some people might think that climate change is important because it is affecting the world, but biodiversity is not affecting the world. So some of you might think that biodiversity is only about some charismatic species, tigers and bears and all those kinds of things that reside in the forest. But biodiversity is a part of our daily life that we don't understand. Our pharmaceutical industry relies on biodiversity. So much of economics, that we see the money, the marketing of so many biological resources, all of that is dependent on biodiversity. It's a part of our everyday life. And biodiversity also has intrinsic value, which is why it is also as important as climate change. So it does not only depend on national level policies, but there is a need to have some global, movement to protect biodiversity, just like there is for climate change. So here you see everything impacts each other. This is a very difficult footprint, animal footprint you can see, in which I put different global targets. I'm talking about biodiversity, climate change, food security, sustainability, agrodiversity, deforestation. There are various things that are being covered in this animal footprint. So if you see, sustainable development goals is one such, you can say global target, or number 17 goals that covers many such issues. It covers poverty, hunger, it covers good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water, decent work, affordable energy, reduce inequalities, and many others. So if you see, many of these are actually linked to climate change and biodiversity almost directly. And there are some SDGs that are not linked directly, but indirectly they are linked to climate change. For example, good health and well-being is linked to climate change and biodiversity, because if there is no climate change, there is good ecosystems, the health of the ecosystem is good, basically means the health of the human beings will also be good. It is usually said that people living in metro areas have lesser lifespan as compared to those who are living away from the metro areas. So basically, it's very important that we are able to, respect the ecosystems that we have and protect them, live in harmony with nature. So that, which is the theme of the the UN Environment Day. Living in harmony with nature has been promoted by UN since a long time now. So that is what we have to do to avoid climate change and to also protect our biodiversity. Sorry, it's not moving. Yeah. So this is just a random question. You may not be able to answer because this is a online class. But if I would have asked you what is important for you, if you are the policy maker and you have to decide that food security is important, or climate adaptation or mitigation, water, well-being, economic growth, you have been given all these problems and you are asked what is important. Will it be possible for you to choose? What will you choose? You will choose development, or you choose climate change targets, you choose sustainability, or you choose alleviating poverty, or conserving biodiversity, or stop desertification. What will you choose from all of these? It will be very, very complicated for you if you are the policy maker. So you don't have to go into the detail of this diagram that I'm showing to you, but this basically shows that you need to balance. You need to balance development and climate change, and development and biodiversity as well. So there are many challenges, many landscape changes that are happening. There are natural drivers, there are anthropogenic drivers, but on the other hand, there is also ecosystem services, livelihoods, medicinal herbs, tourism, other kind of things that need to be focused on so that you can bring some balance. And that is why there's a need to recognize biodiversity and climate change interlinkages. They both, as I have shown to you initially, that Rio Earth Summit, both biodiversity and climate change was a result of Rio Earth Summit. Not that this global problem was a result, but the solution to this global problem was a result of 1992 Rio Earth Summit. The conventions came into being at that time, so it was very important since that time itself to build some sort of interlinkages between them, because forests are important carbon sinks, and UNFCCC points that out. But for a long time we could not do that. So this is basically I did a study, a research on how many people are doing research, how many research papers are being published from the time of the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 until 2019. many important decisions, global decisions have been taken, and as the decisions are taken, the global research on this topic is also rising, and people are focusing on important issues like ecosystem, environmental protection, conservation, forest. So it has become so important, and that is why you see this Environment Day is being celebrated almost everywhere in all colleges of India, and maybe also in abroad. This is the reason so many researchers are now focusing on environment as a problem. The focus is on sustainable management of natural capital to protect our environment so that we can have a good future for all the, all our progeny. That includes you who are listening to this lecture. So the current demand is to restore the ecosystems that have been lost. It could be through nature-based solutions, through community engagement, through traditional and local knowledge, through climate resilient development. There are many options. And just to give example of nature-based solution basically focuses on benefits to people and the environment to allow for sustainable solutions that are able to respond to environmental change and hazards in the long term. So, for example, there are any disasters that are happening, floods, etc. So you need to create solutions that are not technological. Even if it is technological, it should be based on nature, so that nature is also protected when you are taking any action, any initiative to basically avert any risk due to climate change or biodiversity loss. So what is the way forward? How can you synergize climate change and biodiversity actions? It can be through taking more forestry initiatives under climate regime, and also going beyond calling them just as things, means also protecting biodiversity. Conservation and enhancement of biodiversity is very important. It is also important to recognize the rights of local and indigenous people who are living near the forest and who have rights on natural resources. Also to make use of similar timeline. Like I questioned you, like, which of them will you choose? It's very important to look all of them together. If you look at all of them together, then you can solve the problem. If you look at all these environmental problems separately, then you cannot find one solution to that. At the national level, it's very important to have convergence between different national schemes and action plans that are existing. It's also important to engage local communities dependent on local biodiversity for climate adaptation and mitigation. So I'm just showing these examples to you from different countries. This example is from Japan. In this example, students like primary class, junior high school students, they planted trees and they basically restored an ecosystem in a particular part of Aya Biosphere Reserve in Japan. Here you see people were interested in agroforestry. They grew some trees in their agroforestry landscape and they kind of restored a forest that was totally lost. And now that has more carbon dioxide, sequestered on the land, and also it also resulted in a return of the many important plant species that were earlier lost. This is another example of converting the food land and woodland by village agroforestry. So basically, this was the land earlier that you see above, and here below you see the initiatives that have been taken. So new trees are being grown so that they don't have to harvest trees from the forest. So this is a forest protection initiative, and it is also good for climate change. So here you see this is another initiative of mangrove conservation in the Philippines. So the local communities, they came together to restore mangroves because they knew that this is going to protect them from the natural hazards, and it's also good for biodiversity and both as climate change adaptation strategy. This is an example from Kenya, in which the community conserved the forest areas to enhance the tourism potential, and they started growing traditional crop varieties, and more tourism in this area basically helped to get more livelihood options as compared to earlier. So after these examples, just referring to my YouTube channel, it has some videos that might be of interest. If you're interested in environment, it has some 4-5 videos which you can go through, you can see based on your interest. And I want to end with saying that it is in the hands of the future generations who are going through this phase of transition to protect the nature, and nature protects if she is protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Himangana. Yeah, it's an excellent presentation of a very important issue in a very simple and short time. So let me open for 5-10 minutes of discussion for any question. Let me start, Dr. Himangana Gupta. I'd like to ask one question. Apart from Japan, do you think that the third world countries are having more problems?
Yes.
Particularly the democratic countries are more severely affected than those not democratic, like the Arab countries, because people follow the dictates of the dictators. No, in a democratic countries, people are more likely to disobey the orders of the government also. And can you give us some highlight?
This is a very difficult question to answer and to also compare, because not all democratic countries might be same as India. But India is one of the largest democracy of the world, and there is a variety of people residing in India. Some people care about environment, some people don't even bother about what is environment and why do I have to even protect it. So it depends on the kind of person you are. It depends on the kind of moral values. And I think, Professor Sinha, you might have seen in movies, in earlier movies, it was shown that people are throwing, something on the road, and from out of the bus they are, throwing some plastic garbage, or from the balcony people are throwing their, garbage on the street. And that is what people have imbibed and learned. I think more than being a democratic nation or a dictatorship kind of nation, it's important to have good moral values, important to imbibe all these things. Like, it's a very good initiative that you are taking through this, lectures and conducting these lectures, and trying to help your students understand the value of the environment. And I'm sure that slowly as awareness happens, people understand the value of environment, what environment is giving to them. They will definitely want to return that to the mother earth. I think there is no doubt in that. I have lived in Japan for 2 years, and I have seen how much people take care of the the cleanliness. It's a democratic country, but people are concerned about their environment on their own. They will never throw garbage on the streets there. I have not seen much, I have been to several coastal areas and all, and here in India, you've seen the coastal areas, they're so dirty. People just throw whatever they like. They're not worried about coastal biodiversity or anything. But these kinds of things doesn't happen in many other democratic countries. It's just because of the moral values that are given at the education level in those countries. So I think education is the key towards avoiding environmental destruction. Awareness is also the key towards doing that, and that can be done through teachers like you, and also through also through parents. It has to flow. I think the next generation will be more aware about environment, and definitely that will slowly will move towards a more conservation and protection oriented mindset. It's not we cannot see it today, but I'm sure in the next 30-40 years we'll see more environmentally aware people. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I like to invite some of invitees from some of my invitees that to any question from our invitees.
As Dr. Gupta said, she has been there to Japan. How do they manage plastics in Japan? Japanese people.
Yes, so actually the use of plastic is very, very high in Japan. As you may be knowing that they have vending machines everywhere, So, but the good thing is that they have a very nice collection system. All the waste that is collected, it is segregated into different, if it's the plastic waste, glass waste, everywhere you have that kind of segregated, dustbins. And I have seen in India also, people are now very aware. They use the same, dustbin for if it's for the wet waste, dry waste, they are able to differentiate. But in Japan, I think it has been many years that this kind of segregation is happening. But a lot of that waste, it goes for recycling. It is recycled, and some of that waste is also basically the good quality plastic or maybe even the bad quality plastic, it is transported to other countries via ships so that they can use it for other materials or, recycle them for other things. So that is the kind of thing. It's not, it rarely goes to the dump ground actually. That's the thing.
Yes, as you said, collection is very important, but in our country, that seems to be very difficult actually.
Yes, correct. Especially in the mountain areas, I think it's very difficult. I've seen mountain areas day by day, they're getting dirty and dirty. And especially in Himachal, I've not been to Mizoram ever, but I've been to Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, and I see, especially in Himachal Pradesh, the local people in the villages, earlier they were not using glass and plastic so much. So where they dispose their waste, it did not matter. But these days, in the villages, there is a high supply of glass and plastic, and that is just thrown in the valley, in the rivers, without any, dustbin or anything. There are animals walking around it. I just feel it's a very sorry situation for India, actually, in the case of the mountains, especially. In the cities, we still have collection systems, but in rural areas, I think it's a huge problem. Yeah.
I think we can take one more question from Hello.
You said once at the very beginning that climate change is essential also. Although we are changing, we are actually, our change is very rapid. That's why it's problematic. But actually, I'm a layman in this subject. So I want to know that climate change is important. How?
Okay, yes. So actually, instead of climate change now, since you've asked this question, I would like to use the word global warming, which was originally the word that has been used. Climate change word we started to use quite later. So global warming is important for us because if there was no warming, the temperature of the earth would be minus 14 degrees C. For a normal human, plant or animal life, it was not possible to survive in minus 14 degrees C. So based on the calculation, if there are no greenhouse gases on the earth, the temperature of the earth will almost be frozen. So that's why, in a way, global warming is very important for the earth because it acts like a greenhouse. So that's why we call it greenhouse gas also. It acts like a blanket on the earth. It keeps the earth warm so that the species can survive, so that we can live. But now the amount of greenhouse gases is increasing so much that the climate change is happening at a level that is more than necessary. So if we want to keep our earth at an average of 14 degrees C, if it is happening 15, 16, 17, so on an average, the temperature of the earth is rising. Maybe in Rajasthan, in Delhi, 45, 46, 49. But on an average, Earth's temperature, if it is 14 to 15, is not supposed to go to 16. If that change happens, then the entire ecosystem will be impacted. So that is the thing that I was trying to refer to, that global warming is really important for us because we don't want to be frozen. I hope I've been able to answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta. Actually, he's a very busy person. So,
okay, there is an important question by Dr. Sanjay Sinha. Can I answer that, Professor Sinha?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So India is contributing comparatively small percentage of carbon emission compared to most developed countries like America. Do you think that going for industrialization has become a challenge for our country? As on one hand, we need fast industrialization, on the other hand, we need to take up global warming. So very important question, and that is why I want to answer also this question. So India basically contributes 4% of the global emissions today. But historically, India doesn't have much role in causing global emissions. In fact, the climate change that is happening today is because of the countries who industrialized first. But the problem is that after industrializing, they said climate change is happening, so you don't industrialize. We cannot do that. So they have industrialized fully, they have become developed. We have to, development is our overriding priority beyond everything. But we do not want to take the path that the developed countries have taken. They have done ruthless development. We don't want to take that path. We want to follow a path which is more sustainable. But this doesn't mean that we will stop our development. So we need forests. You know that India, we are protecting our forests through various means. We are also trying to increase our forest cover. And for industrialization, of course, industrialization is happening. And now we have missions like Make in India mission. So obviously we're going to have more carbon dioxide emissions if we have more manufacturing industries in India. So that is obviously there. But we have to develop, that is our priority, because we are not historically responsible for climate change. Historical responsibility is on the developed countries. So that is why they also provide finance for emission reductions in the developing countries. That is there. Definitely we'll do, I think we have policies in place that are helping to develop sustainably. Yes. Not rapidly or fast industrialization. I'm not sure whether, but you are right, we are having very fast industrialization, and that is why India's carbon dioxide emissions are actually rising. So in every report that the government report that I was also a part, I have also contributed to greenhouse gas inventory reports. So I can say that yes, emission is rising, but our industrial efficiency is improving every time, every year. That is also very important. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Sinha.
Yes. Yeah, we like to have you in Mizoram also. We can organize a series of lectures on these very important issues that confronting us.
Sure. I'll be very happy to do that.
So with this, I think we can close and
Great.
Thanks. It's going to be exactly 8 now. So once again, thank you so much for your time and excellent presentation also. We learned a lot from you, and in future also, we'll invite you online or offline also.
Sure.
We'll be very glad to have you offline. We like to learn a lot of things on these issues, and our students will be immensely benefited.
Definitely, and I would also love to visit ISOL.
Yeah. So once again, thank you to you and all the participants. And with this, I think we can.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Since I am the host, so I will end the meeting.
Thank you so much.